Welcome to Talking School Sport, and I'm joined today by Adam Morris, who's the founder of BelievePerform, who's going to join us to talk about responding stronger to adversity of the situation that we're in at the moment. Adam, welcome.
Thank you. Hi. Yeah, really excited for today. Hopefully, I can provide you with some really practical and applied advice that can help you in terms of not only yourself individually, but also the students that you work with. And just want you to be really curious around how you can apply the different things that we talk about. And I'm sure there'll be lots of questions anyway. I'm going to share my screen. So hopefully this works with the joys of technology these days. Is that working? Can you see that?
I can see it's not, yeah, absolutely.
There we go. Perfect. So the first thing that I want us to be aware of, if we're going to start responding stronger to adversity, really there's 5 key foundations that we believe are important that we need to put in place. And what we wanted to do is just cover these 5 foundations, make sure that whatever we are delivering is practical and applied. So I myself am a cognitive behavioral therapist, and I work within the world of mental health, treating adults and also young children. Also developed BelievePerform.com, which is a website that provides applied and practical mental health resources. So everything that we want to do is all about trying to engage people with regards to their well-being. So in terms of this whole essence of responding stronger, there are a number of things which we believe are important that you can start thinking about and you can also apply to your students. So the first of these things is all about choosing your attitude. So for us, what we want you to start thinking about, what we want to be really curious around, and this is a really useful question that you can ask the students or colleagues or people you work with, but also yourself. Right now, with the current situations and the current conditions, how can I be the best at responding to adversity? So just thinking about that in relationship to the way you're thinking about things, so your thoughts, the way that you're feeling, and also the way that you're behaving. And when we talk about behaviors is very much the approach of, if you had a camera watching you, what would we see you doing? And that's a really useful question to ask a lot of the young sort of students you work with. Often we work with a lot of youth athletes, and this is a really effective question for them because it gets them to start thinking about, well, you know, if I'm to respond really effectively, if I was to be the best person in the world at responding right now, what does that look like in terms of the way that I'm thinking, the way that I'm feeling, but also the way that I'm acting? What's also really interesting in terms of your attitude, when we talk about responding stronger, a lot of people assume it's all about gaining more power. I need to gain some extra resources. We know that's not the case. It's really useful for us to be able to tap into previous coping skills that we already have available. So we know from the resilience research that people who are resilient are able to tap into positive emotions during times of stress and adversity. So being strong is not always about gaining more power. It can sometimes be about being aware of what you already have there and what resources you have in place to cope with the current situations and demands. The next thing, which is really important, if we are to cope well with adversity, if we're to respond stronger, we need to be able to check in with our mental health. A lot of people assume that you either have good or bad mental health. We know that's not the case. Mental health is on a continuum, and it fluctuates depending on situation and circumstance. So this is a continuum, not going to go into too much depth about it, but this could be something that you educate students about. This can be something that you utilize to understand, where am I on that continuum? And it's a really useful tool just to check in with on potentially a weekly basis. It can help you in terms of understanding what you're currently experiencing, but can also help you in terms of understanding, well, if I am struggling or ill, as it says at the top, with professional support, that might be where you need to reach out and get a bit of help. Now, when we talk about thriving is not, I'm always 100% and, I don't experience any negative emotions. It's normal mood fluctuations. And as we start to experience problems, stress, pressure, we can start fluctuating up and down that continuum. So it's just being about understanding this. And again, we have a lot more resource, more than happy to send, but just starting to educate yourselves and understand this in terms of your culture as teachers, but also implementing it with your students. So we tend to be specialists within the world of infographics. I have shared and more than happy to send out several of the infographics. These are 2 examples of simple ways that you could work with students to check in with their well-being and mental health. The body scan technique is a really great way of helping people to identify where in their body they are feeling a certain emotion. Is it more of a cognitive thing, so thought process, or is it more physiological? Are they feeling tense? Are they feeling relaxed? By checking in with your mental health, by understanding how you're feeling, thinking, you can then put some simple steps in place to help you manage it more effectively. So that's why it's really important that we're supporting students to start to become more aware of these factors, but also providing them with some really useful tools to actually work through this. And again, the emotional thermometer, really easy to work through. So another thing which is really important for us to be focusing on is something called a personal coping history. And this again is a simple activity that anyone can work through. So if you have a group of students, rather than trying to support them in terms of gaining more skills, we know that the current situation has heavily impacted us in terms of stress, pressure. We know that it's impacting the way that people are feeling and thinking. Rather than trying to gain more things, we want to help students to try to tap into previous coping skills. So what they could do is they could do a coping history timeline over the last 5 years, and they could identify maybe 5 or 6 times where they've coped really well with certain stresses, where they've coped really well with certain pressures. And from those situations, they start identifying in those situations how they were thinking, how they were feeling, and how they responded from a behavioral perspective. The reason why we do this is because it's a really useful activity to start understanding your recipe for success. You start understanding, okay, well, those were the key coping skills that were really useful in the past. These are what helped me. These are what I can start using in the current situation now. Or these are some of the skills that I can start applying for future situations. So a personal coping history timeline is a really useful activity for just being able to tap into some of those positive emotions. And I think right now it's a great opportunity for us to use this as something where we can progress. We can see it as an opportunity to grow for development and also for learning. So the next area which we believe is important within the foundations is being able to focus on the present moment, being able to stay in the here and now. And there's lots of great stuff online around the world of mindfulness. Now, mindfulness itself is not an easy activity that you just practice and then all of a sudden you're becoming mindful. With the current situations, a lot of us might be getting absorbed in lots of unhelpful thoughts, unhelpful emotions. And it's really useful that we can just ground ourselves back to the present moment and to the here and now. Often thoughts become problematic when we attach a lot of meaning, time, and importance to them. So mindfulness is a really great activity to help guide people by trying to get back to the present moment. And again, I wanted to provide 2 really simple activities that people can utilize. We have lots of resources on the website, but we also recommend the great app, which is Headspace, for supporting people with trying to actually become more mindful. And the last part is really about supporting people to build positive mental health habits. Often when we experience unhelpful thoughts or negative emotions, we tend to avoid, we tend to withdraw or isolate. And for a lot of you who might be listening as teachers, you might have noticed some of those behaviors among some of the students that you work with. We know there is a cost to not looking after ourselves. So it's really important that throughout our week, we are supporting ourselves, our family, but also students to build positive mental health habits. So what are some of those key habits we must be incorporating? Well, physical well-being is going to be one element. Are we making sure that students are looking after themselves from a sleep perspective? They're eating well-balanced diets, they're staying hydrated, they're managing their energy levels. From a mental health perspective, it's really about self-care. It's about what strategies, what things are they implementing that they are utilizing during these difficult times to try and relax, to try and calm themselves down. But then also what things are they doing that are going to bring a sense of positive reinforcement into their life. So making sure that they are taking regular breaks, making sure that they are including activities in their week that keep them connected to their friends, to teachers, to family. And also finding activities that they can keep doing that provide them a sense of pleasure and achievement. And that's really important in terms of just providing that positive reinforcement. So for me, it's moving into the phase of proactivity. It's supporting your students, supporting your school, supporting yourself to take a proactive approach towards mental health and making sure we are maintaining some of those positive behaviors and habits. So for me, those are the main foundations. I know I've spoken quite quickly about a lot of them, and we can always go into more depth. But as I mentioned at the beginning, just wanted to get you to be really curious around some of this stuff, thinking about, well, what things am I doing myself? But also, what are some of the activities that I could start applying to some of the students or even staff members that I work closely with? I'm going to stop sharing my lovely screen. So yes, those are the main things really I wanted to share, which I thought would be important.
Thanks, Adam. And those resources are on your website at BelievePerform.com.
Yes, and I will also make sure to send them to you so you can send out to people as well.
That's very kind. Just a final question then, Adam. Do you think, what's the legacy of this crisis going to be? Are people going to be scarred forever, or could they emerge stronger from this than they were before?
I think from the research and everything that's been discussed in the news, I think there was something that looked at, were people more worried around their physical health or mental health for the future? I think it was identified that their mental health is more of a concern and worry. We know that this is having a large impact on a number of families, on a number of students with regards to isolation, withdrawal, potential loss of, family members. There's a lot of difficulties. But on the other hand, I'm trying to switch it to, I think a lot of schools and organizations are doing some really great stuff. And that comes down to your culture. I've worked in a number of great schools and really seen how they've truly embedded mental health in terms of providing resources, providing weekly coping skills. So it's making sure that we're doing all those right things, but also as educators that we are signposting. So we're feeling confident that we know where we can refer students or people on if they need that extra support. I do think now is an opportunity for growth, for learning, for development, but we can't take away from the fact that it is having a big impact on people, and it most probably will have a longer lasting impact than we think. So that's where we're trying to say, let's start moving into that phase of proactivity. Let's act now, and let's start thinking about ways that we can look after ourselves, our family, and also our colleagues and the students we support.
And those strategies you've outlined, are they responses to crisis, or are they things that schools should be doing routinely, even in times beyond crisis?
Those are practical and applied activities that they're embedded in sort of the research from either the world of cognitive behavioral therapy or things like acceptance and commitment therapy. They are activities which we need to get people to start doing on a weekly basis. When it comes to, I look at it with regards to my physical health. I try to find opportunity throughout my day where I can be physically active. So if I'm traveling into London, rather than taking the escalators, I might walk up the stairs. That's one opportunity I found. We need to do the same with our mental health. If I'm going into a meeting and I'm feeling a bit worried, can I engage in 2 minutes of deep breathing just to calm myself down? If I experience an unhelpful thought, can I engage in some mindfulness or some challenge or some thought challenging? So really it's about upskilling. It's educating people around how they can utilize these skills. And everything that we teach, you could find in a self-help book from CBT. But it's making sure that we're providing evidence-based interventions and practical things. So for me, moving forward, it's a weekly basis. It's making sure if we're focusing on our physical health, how can we do the same for our mental health and mental fitness?
And you feel that should be incorporated in the normal life of a school?
I think it should be incorporated within the culture. I don't see why not. Again, there are some fantastic schools who do this brilliantly, but it comes from the top up. Even if that's starting with trying to get students to open up and share more around their well-being and mental health, but making sure that we have good referral systems in place, making sure that we're having people in the school who are mental health first aid trained. So there's lots of positive steps that we can take to doing this. I think it's just a matter of acting rather than being, a lot of us are being reactive rather than proactive.
And do you feel this is something schools could do better than they've done previously?
I think it's difficult. I think, with limited time, limited budget, it's not easy. But I think it's about being creative in that way. So we don't always have to bring in external people to do things, which is why mental health first aid training is great. There's an opportunity for us to upskill educators and teachers within this resource bank, within these knowledge, within these ideas, and they then embed it within the culture. So I think schools can improve, but I think with what they're doing, I think they're already doing an okay job. It's just a matter of working together right now, supporting each other, and making sure that we're putting in steps some simple plans to be proactive.
Brilliant, Adam. Thanks very much. As I say, the resources are on the website at believeperform.com. And thanks very much for your advice in this crucial time.
No worries. Thank you.